Hello everyone, welcome to Professional Math Junior. My name is Mr. Essen and this is an app inventor tutorial on how apps understand yes and no. And for that, I'm going to be using a game called Be a Maths Teacher with 2 equations and 2 questions. Let's just say the Q1 is right and I'm going to submit it. I got it right. Let's restart. This time I'm going to say Q2 is wrong and I'm going to submit it again. I got it wrong. So let's head to App Inventor and make that. Let's start. So I'm already in the MIT App Inventor and I have got my designer part 90% done. I've got my labels and buttons in here. You guys can pause the video and try and replicate the designer side. Don't worry, you guys have learned the concepts and components before, so I believe you guys should be able to do it. If you really want to have this copy, feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to share our copy and other revision materials with you. You guys might have noticed that my designer part is still missing our questions, as in is Q1 right, or the other one was is Q2 wrong. In order to do that, I'm gonna introduce a new component. The name of the component is switch. It can be found in user interface, and I'm gonna click on it and drag it to my screen 1. Because I have 2 questions, I'm gonna get to switch. Okay, so what is a switch component? Switch is a component that is able to detect user taps. When user taps on it, it turns something on or off. Just imagine the light. When the light is on and tapping on the light switch turns off the light, and vice versa. Now I'm going to change their properties. So let me just click switch 1 and I'm going to name it as Q1 right switch. So Q1 right switch, and I'm gonna click font bold. Font size is gonna be 30 and the height is gonna be 15%, and I'm gonna say text is gonna be is Q1 right. As you guys can see, the black color sort of blends in a little bit with the background, so I'm going to change the background color to white. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to try and do it for switch 2, but the name of switch 2 is going to be Q2 wrong switch. Okay, and then the properties are going to be very similar. Font bold, font size is going to be 30, height is going to be 15%, and text is going to be is Q2 wrong. So is Q2 wrong. Text color is going to be white. Okay, so that completes our designer part. Let's now head to our block side. Before I start making any blocks for our game, I'd like to mention something in here. Do you guys remember how computers really understand information? Well, they don't understand information the way we humans do, right? They understand data, right? And the data has different types. And today we are going to learn one of them, which is called Boolean. Boolean has 2 values, which is true or false. That's the only values that they can have. And let me just come into logic and get true and false. So these are the only 2 values that a Boolean can have. Computers don't really understand yes and no, but they do understand true or false, right? So we'll have to use true and false to determine yes and no in our app. With that understood, let's start making blocks for our game. You guys might remember that when we start the game, our result label and restart button are not visible. So when do our game start? Our game starts when screen 1 initializes. And what component am I talking about? I'm talking about result label and restart button. So I'm gonna find my result label, which is this one. I'm gonna get any of these set blocks and now set visible. Of course, it's gonna be false. So I'm gonna use one of these Boolean values. And then I'm gonna find my restart button. any of these set blocks, get visible. Of course, it's going to be false. I'm going to come into logic and false. Next, let's head to designer part for a second, and we're going to have to generate random numbers for our Q1 left, Q1 right, and also for Q2 left and Q2 right. So let's just do it for Q1 left. Then it's called Q1 left number label. So I'm going to find it in blocks and get any of these set blocks and change it to text. Now I'm going to have to generate random integers, and that block can be found in math random integers. I'm going to change its range to 0 to 1000, and now I can just duplicate, and this should be Q1 right, and further duplicate it, it should be left, Q2, duplicate it again, and this should be Q2 right. Stick them all together, and then I'm gonna put them in when screen 1 initialize. Next, I'm gonna need something that is going to help me save my answer, whether it's correct or wrong. In order to do that, I'm gonna come into variables and create a variable. I'm gonna say Q1 correct, and I'm gonna give it a value of false, which is one of these Boolean values that we have learned initially, and then I'm gonna duplicate it, and it's gonna be Q2 correct. Of course, this is also going to be false. So we have our questions in here, and we also have our switch ready. Then how do we answer these question 1 and question 2? We answer them by clicking on submit button. So I'm going to come into blocks and find submit button and get when submit button is clicked. Okay, we have 2 questions in here. Let's just talk about Q1. What is the criteria of Q1 being answered correctly? One of them is, of course, when Q1 left is greater than Q1 right and this switch is switched on. So let's just code for the first criteria. I'm going to come into blocks, and because I'm looking for Q1 left being greater than Q1 right, I'm going to get greater sign. It's going to be in maths, and I'm going to change this equal to greater. Okay, so what are the 2 sides that I'm looking for? I'm looking for this Q1 left label and Q1 right label. So I'm going to come into blocks and Q1 left label dot text. So this is the left part. Okay, what about the right? I'm going to come into Q1 right number label and dot text. Okay, so if left is greater than right, and what else? When Q1 right switch is on. So that means I'm going to have to come into Q1 switch, and I'm going to have to find if is Q1 right switch is on. Then how do I combine these 2? I'm going to have to get AND blocks, which is going to be in logic AND. So the first part is going to be if question 1 left label is greater than text of question 1 right, and if question 1 right switch is on. That's the first criteria. Okay, then what is the second criteria? The second criteria is going to be when Q1 left is smaller than Q1 right, and this Q1 right is not switched on. Instead, I'm going to just duplicate this part, and I'm going to change its sign from greater to smaller. Okay, and of course I'm going to need an AND operator. I'm going to get AND block. So this is the left part of AND. What about the right? Right is when right switch is off. So I'm going to say right switch off. But this is true, right? So how do I make it false? I'm going to have to come into logic again and get not. That means if right switch is off, right? Okay. Now, either this is going to happen or this is going to happen, then we get it correct. But then how do I combine them? I'm going to come into logic again and get OR sign. So this entire piece of block is going to go into this part, and this part is going to come into here. As you guys can see, it's a very long block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click or right click on it and click on external input. Perfect. And if you guys want to further make it easier for you, you can click on it again, and that should be very easy to read. So this is our first criteria. This is our second criteria for Q1 to be correct. Now, we can't stick these with submit button, right? So we're gonna need something else. These are our criterias. In other words, this is a condition. So if we use condition, we can just get if then. So I'm gonna get if then block, put it in submit, and this entire criteria, which is a condition, is going to be in here. Next, if this really happens, what do I want? I want to set my global Q1 to correct, to true. So I'm going to come into variables and get the set variables, and I'm going to choose Q1, and of course it's going to be true. Next, let's talk about Q2. Let me go to designer part. Now, what is the criteria for our Q2 to be right? First is of course when Q2 left is smaller than Q2 right and wrong switch is off. That's the first criteria. So let's just code for that. And because I'm looking for something Q2 being smaller than that of Q2 right, I'm going to get a smaller block which is going to be in maths and change equal to smaller. Okay, now it's going to be very similar to a Q1. The left side is going to be Q2 left number label, and right side is going to be Q2 right number label. So I'm going to say Q2 left number dot text. If it's smaller than Q2 right number text. Okay. What else? Now we need to determine our switch. So wrong switch, it has to be false. So I'm gonna come into my wrong switch and Q2 wrong switch dot on, and of course I want it to be off, so I'm gonna get not from block. Same thing, we're gonna have to get AND block to stick these two together. So AND, the question is going to come in here, and the switch condition is going to be in here. Okay, perfect. That's the first criteria. What about our second criteria? Second criteria is going to be when Q2 left is greater than Q2 right, and our Q2 switch is on. So duplicate this instead of doing it all again and change it to greater, and of course get AND and just duplicate this part as well. So duplicate. Now this is our question, which is going to come into the first part of and second one is going to be our wrong switch, which is going to be in here. So there are two criteria for question 2 to be correct. One is, of course, when left number is smaller than right number and wrong switch is off. The second criteria is going to be when left number is greater than right number and wrong switch is on. Of course, we're going to need one more logical operator, which is going to be OR, and I'm going to put our condition 1 in the first part and our second condition in second part. Same thing again, external input. Let's do it further. Okay, now what else do we need? We need if then. So if then is going to be in here, and if this criteria, if this condition is met, what do we want? We want to set our global Q2 to correct. Now we can know if our Q1 is being answered correctly or not, and also for Q2. If they are answered correctly, then Q1 correct and Q2 correct are going to be set to true. Next, what do we want? If we are able to answer correctly, we want to set our result label dot text to say good job, and also we want to change its text color to blue. But if not, we want to say you cannot be a math teacher, and of course we want to set the text color to red. So how do we do that? What is the criteria? What is the condition to change the text color and the text of result table? The condition is if Q1 is true and if Q2 is also true. So because we are trying to compare whether a value is true or false, a Boolean, then I'm going to get equal. Then what am I looking for? I'm looking for get variable. Which variable is it going to come first? I'm looking for Q1. So if Q1 is correct, it is of course true because computers does not understand correct or wrong. If Q1 is correct and Q2, if Q2 is also correct, if Q2 is also true. So and if question 1 has been answered correctly and if question 2 has been answered correctly, then what do we want? Then we want to change the text color of result label. But first just get if then and change it to else. If then else. Okay, so this is our criteria. If this is our condition. If our answers are correct, what do we want? First thing we want to do is we want to change the text of our result label, and it's called result LBL. So I'm gonna come in blocks and find result label. It's this one. Set, of course, it's gonna be a set block, and I'm gonna say text. Okay, what do I want to say? I'm gonna say good job. So I'm gonna say good job. Okay, what else do I want? I want to change the text color of result label. So find result label again, get any of these set blocks and get text color. Text color, what color do I want? I'm looking for some bluish color. I think this is fine. Okay, so if I'm able to answer question 1 and 2 correctly, then my result label will change to good job and in blue color. But if not, what do I want? Then I'm going to say you cannot be a math teacher. Oops. You can't be a math teacher dot. Okay, then I'm gonna change the color of it also. This time it's gonna be red. Let's pause here for a second and take a look at our app so far. As you guys can see, we have our questions generated and we also have our two switches. We have our submit button also. So let's just choose randomly and try pressing on submit button. See, nothing happens. We should be able to see a result label, but because we have not coded for that, we don't have a result. And also the submit button should be replaced with the restart button. So let's just code for that. Once the user submit their answer, true or false, it doesn't matter, but users should be able to see their result in here, in this component, which is result label. So how do we do that? We are going to click on result label and make it visible. So it's going to be visible to true. Perfect. So now whenever the user have answered something true, then they're going to see good job. If wrong, then they're going to see you can't be a maths teacher. Next, we want to see a restart button because we have submitted the answer. Now we want to restart our game, right? Then we're gonna say submit button is going to go away, of course. It's gonna be submit button dot visible to false, and I can just duplicate this part and click on restart, which is going to be true. So submit button is going to be false and this one is going to be true. Next, how do we restart our game? Because now we do allow our users to restart it, right, by clicking on restart button. So first of all, we're going to have to come into restart button when restart button clicked. What is the functionality of restart button? Restart button is basically going to restart our app, which is very similar to our screen 1 initialize. Then I'm going to just duplicate it and then get the codes out of it and put it in restart and delete screen1.initialize because we already have it in here. But this is not enough. I also want to set my switch Q1 right switch and Q2 wrong switch to false. For that, I'm going to have to come into Q1 right switch dot on and set it to false. I'm going to just duplicate this block and I'm going to choose Q2. Next. Remember when we initialize our Q1 correct and Q2 correct, they were initialized to false. And I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to come into variables and get set because I'm going to change their value. So global Q1 correct is going to be false. And of course, I'm going to duplicate it again. And this one is going to be Q2. Okay. Stick them all together and put them in restart. Last thing that I want to do is I want to make my submit button visible. So I'm going to come into submit button and set and make it visible to true. So basically restart button and submit button are following each other. When I click on restart button, the restart button sort of goes away and submit button comes back. When I click on submit button, itself it goes away and restart button sort of come back. Now we are done with our blocks. Let's take a look at the emulator and see how our app is right now. As you guys can see, we have question 1 and question 2 being displayed. Also we have switch Q1 right and Q2 wrong, and we have submit button. Okay, I'm gonna just randomly click on Q1 being right and I'm gonna leave Q2 wrong as it is and press on submit button. Okay, so I can't be a maths teacher. Let's try and restart our app. It does. Our label sort of goes away. We have new questions in here, and our switch Q1 right and Q2 wrong are also in their initial position. And now we are able to see submit button again. Perfect. Let's do a bit of recap for today. We started off by learning about switch. Switch is a component that is able to detect tabs, and it can be used to determine yes and no from users in our app. Secondly, we learned about a data type called Boolean. A Boolean can only have two possible scenarios, true and false. For example, if we wanted to display our submit button, we set the visibility to true. If we wanted to hide it, we could have set it to false. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. I'm Mr. Essen and this is Preface Nomad Jr.